Good afternoon. This is Talib Kareem. I'm an attorney and past co-chair of the National Bar Association's Health Law Section, and also the founder and CEO of ABE, which is a platform that provides legal services to people from across the country and also helps to promote health and wellness providers. Very grateful for the opportunity to be with such a distinguished grouping of people, and in fact, not only distinguished panelists, but some really high caliber folks who are joining us on this webinar. And so we want you to, at the very outset, be sure to go ahead and start providing your questions if you have any, and put them in the chat. We hope this will be a very interactive conversation with both our panelists as well as with you. But before I go on, I would be remiss if I did not, first of all, acknowledge the chair of our section, and that is Attorney Sharice Frazier, as well as the outstanding organizations that have fueled this conversation. First, starting with the American Health Law Section, of course, the National Bar Association's Health Law Section, and the Black Women's Health Imperative. We hope that you guys will go and check those organizations out as well, along with the references to the individual panelists that we hope will be put into the chat at some point. I think it's always good to have contacts, either web or emails, that can be used so you can follow up with the individual panelists as you will. So let us dive right into this extremely timely conversation. As many of you guys know, at the start of the pandemic, there was a lot of focus on the issues of what were the underlying causes for the high rates of COVID, particularly in the African-American community. These things which are called comorbidities. And obesity, along with high blood pressure and diabetes, were some of the top comorbidities. But after the advent of the vaccination programs, there were less conversations around those underlying issues. However, now, as we have heard from some of the leading COVID experts like Dr. Anthony Fauci, most Americans are likely to contract COVID. And we know that African Americans are sadly more likely to die, disproportionate to our size of the population, from COVID. We also know that obesity is the #2 risk factor next to age for both contracting and dying from COVID. And along with that, we know that 1 out of 2 African Americans have obesity. And that is also taking into consideration that point. We can also think about, in the context of that, what does that mean? That means that 1 out of 2 African Americans, including 47% of African American youth, have about 100 more pounds on their body than they should. Can just think about that. 100 more pounds than they should in terms of their body. So this is a really important issue from both a public policy standpoint, because there are some things that are happening within the economy that are causing this incidence, this reality, if you will, for many of our people in our country. And it really doesn't just impact African Americans, it impacts all Americans, but particularly African Americans. So this is the reason why we're having this conversation, and it is apropos. We're still in Black History Month, a few more days left before it concludes. And so we think that it's very important for us to have this conversation. We know it is said that we are created by a single creator, with a guarantee that we're all going to die and return to that creator. And in fact, some people say that it's structural racism, which is most important in terms of the factors that cause the disparities between those who contract and die from COVID. And while we acknowledge these things, and while it may be difficult for us to eradicate racism, I believe, and I think we can probably all agree, that we individually and collectively have the power to address the issues of obesity within ourselves and within those around us. So without any further ado, I want to turn to this robust panel and have a conversation. And prayerfully, we hope to give you some resources. We hope to give you some ideas for how you can address issues of again, lack of fitness within both your own community, your own family, your own self, and how you can actually contribute to this larger conversation that needs to be engaged in our nation. So to start off with, let me introduce Monique Lenoir. I was always going to say Dr. Monique Lenoir, but in fact, she's the daughter of a doctor and the executive director of the African American Wellness Project, which I understand is led by her father. Welcome, welcome, Lenoir. Welcome, Monique, rather. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Nice to be here.
Thank you so much. We also have Dr. Antoine Haygood, PhD, fitness instructor, assistant dean for medical student affairs, and assistant professor for clinical radiation and oncology at the Indiana University School of Medicine. Welcome, Dr. Haygood.
Thank you. Just one small note, Haywood.
Haywood. Okay, well, thank you very much. You know, it's funny, I know a Haygood, so maybe that was the reason why that was a mistake on her part. Dr. Haywood, thank you very much. Also, Chef Huda Muhmin, a founder and executive chef at the Chef Huda's Kitchen, based here in Washington, D.C. Welcome, Chef Huda. How are you?
I'm well. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Thank you for joining us. And we also have Dr. Yolanda Hancock, also known as Dr. Yola from NOLA. She is a physician, a master's of public health, professor at the Milken Institute School of Public Health, and the founder of the Delta Health and Wellness Counseling. Is that Delta as in Delta Sigma Theta, or Delta in terms of the geographic location of our country?
Combination of both.
All right. Well, we definitely appreciate having all of our Pan-Hellenic organizations involved with this conversation. I also am a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. I can't help but acknowledge that. But yeah, nevertheless, and nevertheless, we are grateful for the conversation and welcome you all. And again, we appreciate you taking some time. Feel free, again, if you haven't already done so, to put some contact information into the chat for people to follow up with you, or maybe our support team from the National Bar Association can do that, because we do want to have everyone, engaged in this conversation with you even after the conversation. With that, let me start. It's clear that COVID has not impacted us all equally. African Americans, as was mentioned earlier, are twice as likely than Caucasian Americans to contract COVID. Latino Americans were 1.5 times more likely than Caucasian Americans to contract COVID. As a result, African Americans are likely to die from COVID disproportionate to our percentage in the nation's population. Why do you think this is the case? And we'll just kind of start. Let's go and start with the ladies, if you don't mind. How about we start with Dr. Yolanda Hancock. Dr. Hancock, please.
No problem. I'll tell you like they do at home. We got to put some respect on my name. Don't forget the R, Yolandra.
Yolanda.
It's all good. It's all
Thank
good.
you, Dr. Yolanda.
You're very welcome. It's really looking at systems, right? I actually spoke on this. I did a TED Talk on this very issue back in 2020, and it's looking at what systems are in existence that facilitate decreased development of certain diseases. Health disparities are defined as preventable differences in health outcomes based on power, politics, and profits. That's what drives health disparities. Our behaviors, our choices are grounded in the environment in which we make them. And so when you think about specifically COVID, 75% of Black and Brown people did not have the option of teleworking in 2020. We are who kept this country running, and historically, currently, and forever, right? Until we finally get the equity that we deserve. But because 75% of us could not telework, it meant we showed up at hospitals, grocery stores, bus routes, etc. That is really, to be honest with you, the #1 risk factor in terms of COVID-19 exposure. And then when you think about other things, public transportation, I vividly remember a picture of New Yorkers on the L train. It was full of Black and Brown people going to work during COVID. It's multi-generational housing environments. I remember when I was a little girl in Louisiana, shout out to those of you from the boot. It was me, my mommy, my auntie, my grandmother, and 3 of my uncles all living in the same house. So I can only imagine in 2020 in that same environment, if my uncles, my mommy, my auntie had to go to work and then come back home at a time where PPE was not available, but there was still the expectation of showing up for work. That's what put us at risk. And then prior to COVID showing up, we were already battling these health disparities where certain chronic diseases like obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, and hypertension further facilitated our risk of not just getting it, but developing complications from it and dying from it. That's why we see what we see right now. And there was a recent NIH study just released this week that showed that it isn't twice as likely for African Americans to die from COVID, but between 3 to 4 times likely, especially as we're coming out of this Omicron variant. It's all of those things. I always say health is in all policies. COVID disparities were in everything: economics, education, and access to healthcare, because we also have to talk about the issues of accessing care. Back in 2020, it was hard for a person of color to even get a COVID-19 test. We saw publicly at Indiana University, Dr. Susan Moore, who lost her life in her battle against racism in a healthcare system that poo-pooed her concerns and her request for care. So if a Black female physician could not advocate sufficiently for herself to save her life, what is the hope of my grandmother or my mommy? And that's why we see what we're seeing with these numbers.
Wow. Well, I think it would be apropos to have Dr. Haywood, who is from Indiana University, to chime in there and give his take on the issues of disparity.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with everything that was said, and I would add, from an empowerment standpoint, as we think about the role of healthcare providers as well as healthcare policy advocates. When it comes down to it, although we write about Black and Hispanic disparities in ways that almost sound genetic, they're not. And in fact, the melanin of your skin does not predetermine your destination for COVID, right? So all the things that Dr. Yola mentioned are very important because it comes down to things that you can actually advocate for, changes in environmental policy, what's reimbursable by providers. When you think about our insurance companies, when you think about early efforts around COVID and the distribution of ventilators and other resources, it was based in some places on life expectancy or these algorithms, which when you look down at the data, comes down to like zip codes that have been historically marginalized or redlined, and other issues there. So in terms of like what this group can do, it is learning more about environmental justice, understanding how race is used as a proxy for healthcare disparities, and then really getting into the weeds around healthcare policy and how patients are prioritized, what we focus on, and what's reimbursable, and then ultimately the contributions that the academic health centers, translational research centers, etc., contribute towards the Black and Hispanic community.
Wow, very good point. Chef Huda, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with everything that was said. We really have to look at this holistically. There are obviously the issues of health and healthcare, and also trust of the healthcare system as well. I personally lost loved ones due to the fact they were just not comfortable going to the doctor, or they just thought they would sleep it off, or they thought that, oh, I'll take some herbs, which herbs are great. But in the context of something like COVID, which we hadn't seen before, not the best idea to just home remedy it or Google it. So we really have to talk about all of the issues that are concerning African Americans and minorities in general, with how we approach our healthcare and how we approach our status in society, and how that affects us in our population, and also in how we move forward and how we progress as a people.
Very good points. Very good points. Monique, please chime in.
Sure. I mean, I think what has been said is really what I was going to say. The question, why were African Americans more affected by COVID? At the African American Wellness Project, we know that health disparities have always existed. And to your point, Black people are distrustful of doctors. So there's that factor. Two, when, we all know that when Black America catches a cold, or what is the saying? When America catches a cold, Black Americans catch pneumonia. So of course we were way more affected by it for so many reasons, a lot of which Dr. Hancock spoke to. African Americans have always been on the front lines, bus drivers, working in hospitals, working in grocery stores. And when the pandemic hit, our population was still working, and we were not paying attention to what was going on with COVID. And again, not only that, we were distrustful of doctors, and so many of the health disparities that exist are pre-existing conditions to COVID. So all of those factors combined are what I think led to us being more affected. I think you did talk about the statistics, but again, Black women have seen more than a 2-year reduction in their lifespan because of the pandemic. The COVID pandemic has reduced the lifespan of Black men by an average of 3 years. And also Black Americans are 3 times more likely to die from COVID. So these statistics are staggering, and we definitely need to make sure our population knows, one, about the vaccination, the importance of the vaccination, and also hear from trusted resources in their community.
All right. Very good points. And I think this leads us to this next point. As we said earlier, data points to obesity as a second leading indicator next to age for causing COVID and leading to deaths from COVID. Some of the people already have stated that African American men have obesity of nearly 50%, African American women of 57%, Latin men and women together have obesity rates of 45%, Caucasians have obesity rates lower of 42.2%. Well, since we do know this, and while people can't reverse their age, they can absolutely reverse or reduce their obesity level, as again, dropping an extra 100 pounds in their body. Why do you think there's been less emphasis on the issue of addressing obesity? Let's go back around. Maybe start with Monique and come back around this time.
Sure. So I'm also work as a certified health and wellness coach. And I think, really what I found that with a lot of the people that I've coached, it's primarily women. And I think it's because women are oftentimes homemakers, they're mothers, and they take, their health more seriously. I think African American males sometimes tend to ignore, and also because they're maybe fearful of going to the doctor because of stigmas from the past, they may not go to the doctor earlier on to find out what can be done to reduce obesity, and may not even know all of the things that you just said, that African Americans are 2.2 times more likely to get diabetes, and also at higher rates for other conditions, which are all tied to obesity. So in the end, I don't think there's been a close enough tie to obesity and all of the other health conditions, not just COVID, but everything else that affects the African American community: diabetes, high blood pressure, arthritis, so many of these illnesses that can be controlled by diet.
Chef Huda.
I agree with everything Monique just said. I think when we think about obesity, people think it's as easy as, oh, just switch and eat a salad. There's a reason why you're obese. There's a reason why you're turning to food or you're not taking care of yourself and making yourself a priority. And there's all of these issues that we don't talk about and we don't deal with, because for your average American, they're just working their 9 to 5 or their extra hours to put food on the table and take care of their family and their daily responsibilities. The luxury of taking the time to really deal with your health, for a lot of people, is just that, a luxury. And I think when we start talking about obesity, yes, it's easy to look at it just on a blank sheet of paper and say, oh, obesity is the issue and we should all just lose weight. But there's other issues surrounding that. I love teaching people how to eat healthy, but if people don't see the value in that and make it a part of their life and don't think of it as something that's this massive change or this massive diet, they're gonna not be successful. If they think about working out as this chore that they have to do versus this thing that they're investing into themselves, it's not gonna work out. So we really have to talk about the psychology behind it and also deal with the issues that individuals have. Everything is not a quick fix for everyone. And just like, I always like to tell people that just like cars, there's a bunch of different cars in the world and there's a bunch of different people in the world. What works for one car doesn't work for another car, but we all need the same essential things. So I really think if we can have a bigger discussion about obesity, healthy eating, what healthy eating actually looks like. It's not just always turning to going vegan, which is an extreme for a lot of people. There are middle grounds that work for other people because bodies are different. So I really think when we talk about obesity, we need to have a bigger conversation and talk about the underlying issues that cause obesity.
Very good point. Dr. Haywood.
Yeah, great points, and I agree with Chef Huda. I would say the first thing you need to consider is really denormalizing sugar. It's a huge part of our diets and really leads to obesity when it comes down to it. That's where you see your insulin spike, and it's just a part of the way a lot of us have grown up drinking sodas or Kool-Aid, and then sugar to make yams or sweet potatoes taste better. And there are alternatives to consider, like monk fruit or stevia, and those are things that you should consider that are low glycemic and actually help you manage calories. The second thing is really, I would say, focusing your plate around nutrient-dense fruits and vegetables. And in fact, when you think about it, your stomach can only take so much food in a given meal. And if you are, surrounding the foods that you enjoy with nutrient-dense, voluminous vegetables or fruits, it still allows you to enjoy that steak or piece of chicken, but also get a really healthy, low-calorie, nutrient-dense meal in. And I would say, like, related to that is you have to be flexible and make sure that you are including the things that are important to you. And then find ways to reduce sneaky calories associated with that. So if you enjoy fried chicken, can you consider using a 0-calorie, no propellant spray, and then also using an air fryer, right? So a chicken leg may be 190 calories in the air fryer and you can get it pretty crispy, but like 600 calories if you were to fry it in a deep fryer, right? And then I would say drinking more water and just being conscious of calories through your drinks. And if those are important to you, just making sure it fits within your diet, and ultimately realizing that muscles are built in the kitchen. And there are lots of approaches and there's evidence behind things like keto and stuff, but when it comes down to it, a calorie deficit is where you're going to see weight loss and inches lost on your waist, and that's what you want to go for. And I would say the final piece of advice is to consider how you can unprocess your diet. And look at the back of a label and if you can't pronounce the first 10 ingredients on the back of a label, you should be asking whether or not it's okay to put that in your body.
Man, I really commend that description. It reminds me of my mother, the Almighty have mercy upon her, who was one of my early, I guess, influences in terms of healthy eating. She had contracted cancer. And so instead of treating her cancer through the normal course of getting chemotherapy or radiation therapy, she decided to try to embark upon a regimen of improvements in her diet, and it was remarkable because one of the things that happened was that you can see how gray my hair is, and you know, our family always has gray hair, but her hair turned black. And so some of her friends were asking, well, what happened to your hair? You know, did you finally go ahead and just start dyeing it? And she said, no, gray hair is a result of a lack of vitamin B. And so I increased my vitamin B intake, and now my hair has gone back. So, you know, this is really important. And in particular, you know, the diet of our children. Dr. Hancock, Dr. Yolandra Hancock, can you tell me about what your thoughts are, and particularly the impact of the diet on our children?
Sure. You know, this question is near and dear to my heart. I'm a board certified obesity specialist and have been working in the obesity space for over a decade. I think it's important to acknowledge that obesity is multifactorial. A lot of us, especially when we have not dealt with obesity, assume that it's a behavioral issue, that it's based on personal choice. And instead, it's really based on what we call the socio-ecological model in public health. It's a systems issue. And there's something called the social determinants of health. Each of the social determinants of health can be applied to any health condition. Obesity is birthed out of where a human being is born, meaning the womb space in which a fetus is created facilitates risk of obesity, where that fetus ends up growing, living, going to school, working, playing, praying, and aging, right? And I always think about it in the context of a fetus, because I'm a pediatrician. It's always about the babies, right? So what environment is this fetus growing up in? What is the health condition of the mother preconception? If she's dealing with diabetes, if she's dealing with obesity herself, if she's taking certain medications, it puts this fetus at risk. Once the fetus becomes a baby and is born, was that baby put on antibiotics? Was in terms of changing the gut flora? We know that internally.
You mean so they should not be on antibiotics, or they should be on antibiotics?
Clearly, you need to, depending on what the health condition is, right? But a lot of times, especially in the pediatric space, a baby sneezes hard, parents demand antibiotics. It's much easier for me to write your prescription for amoxicillin than to debate you on the health impacts of you taking amoxicillin. We are in a very, as you guys know, we're here at the National Bar Association. We live in a very litigious society. I don't write for the prescription for antibiotics. The eardrum burst, now I'm in court, right? I don't operate in that space. I do a lot of education for my families to explain to them why I do not prescribe antibiotics willy-nilly, but I own my own practice and control my own time, and I allow for space to explain things. You think about the neighborhood in which a child grows up. I used to work out in Southeast DC. It was a fast food gauntlet. So if I'm a single mother with 3 children, am I going to get on 2 buses to go down to Giant and buy groceries and then commit an hour to cook something my children are going to say no to? Or am I going to go to one of the 5 fast food establishments that surrounded my health office at that time? I know I'm going to spend some money, but it's going to be just as much money I spend at Mickey D's as it is at Giant, right? But I know my kids are going to eat it. I don't have to worry about the stress of cooking, especially I don't have those cooking skills. And I had to catch 2 buses, carry 4 bags of groceries with 3 kids, and then try to get home. Like, we have to understand that there are systems in place based on policy, gentrification, all of those things that determine our choice, our ability to drink water, safe water. We think about Flint. Like, you tell me to drink water, I don't have the luxury of spending money on Deer Park bottled water. All I'm going to get is this water out of this tap, but guess what? It makes my kids sick. So I'm going to buy what I can afford. I can get a 6-pack of Huggies for 59 cents versus 1 bottle of water for $2.29.
I think Dr. Hancock's sound, but you know, you were dropping it, Dr. Hancock, and I applaud you for doing that. And I don't know if it's my internet connection is unstable, but I think we're back.
Okay.
But
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Thank you so much for dropping that knowledge on us, and particularly given the issues of our children's obesity and how that impacts us. But if I can just, I don't know, push back on that and say, well, we do know that it is environmental and the factors are maybe external to the individuals. What are the internal factors, though? What are the issues of self-responsibility that are there that can be exercised to make a difference in terms of people's health outcomes, and particularly obesity in the context of COVID?
I think it's having knowledge, right? It's having a clear understanding of how much sugar am I consuming? How many calories am I eating? In my office, we talk about all of the factors that influence weight. How much sleep are you getting? What is your stress level? Cortisol, you can eat air, and cortisol levels will make you gain weight with the 200 calories that Dr. Haywood allows you to eat as part of his fitness program. So it isn't that people dealing with obesity are over here eating 3,000 calories a day. I have patients who eat 800 calories a day because they're skipping meals and they're still gaining weight because their stress level is at a level 10. So it's paying attention to all of the arenas of health in your life. What is your financial health looking like? If your money is funny, your food selections are a lot different than other people's. What is your mental health, your emotional health, your relational health, and your physical health? What are you eating? Have you paid attention? Have you downloaded an app to help you track how much you're consuming and the timing of consumption, right? You could eat 1,200 calories, but if 800 of them are 8 p.m. and then you go to bed at 9, you're going to still gain weight. So truly knowledge is power. We have to just understand that it's a combination of factors. It's policy, neighborhood and community, and your individual choice.
You speak of neighborhood, and we know that, as you mentioned, in Southeast Washington, D.C., which if you all aren't from Washington, D.C., you know, is historically a impoverished community of Washington, D.C., which right now is going through rapid gentrification. So I guess this may change, but at least for now, it is considered a food desert. And some of you all might be able to more define that. But again, they don't have access to healthy foods, particularly groceries or restaurants that provide healthy options on their menu. What do you think can be done from a public policy standpoint, and again, by governments as well as by private individual companies and nonprofits to address this issue? Dr. Haywood. Dr. Haywood?
Yeah, thank you for that. You know, I think the SNAP benefits continue to evolve, and you see in a lot of places where, you know, farmers markets are accessible. But, you know, one question is, can we take it into the technology space where, you know, much like the app you have yourself in your own world of connecting resources and people, can we connect food to people, right? You know, much like other delivery services. And, you know, if our cities are rooted in systemic and environmental racism, can we circumvent that by directly connecting vendors and our community, right? And
so like a DoorDash, but for healthy foods, particularly serving people in underserved neighborhoods.
Right, and maybe that accept various types of benefits, and those who aren't on benefits but are still in underserved zip codes. And maybe that's a way, one, that we can, through policy and action, immediately create change and improve accessibility.
Very good point. And let me go to well, not doctor, but go to Melanie and ask you this question. We understand that in some cases, violence neighborhoods are also leading to, again, choices about where to eat. As Dr. Hancock was mentioning, imagine, you know, again, being in Southeast Washington, D.C., trying to go and get food for your children at night, and then having to worry about maybe getting shot. You know, do you do that, or go to the nearby McDonald's, or you know, go and order from DoorDash McDonald's? What do you think? And again, if you think about the technology that Dr. Haga was mentioning, there might be some reluctance from drivers, using these types of apps to go into those neighborhoods that might be riddled by crime, as they are right now. What do you think about that issue?
You said Melanie, I think you mean Monique, right?
Yes, Monique. I apologize, Monique. I need to get my screen up. Thank you, Monique.
No, I mean, I think that's a very relevant fact. I mean, let's face it, during this pandemic, most people, a majority of African Americans, and not just African Americans, but most people have been eating fast foods and eating out because it's more convenient. People are afraid to go to grocery stores and restaurants. I'm sorry about that. But I think that, sorry. So I think the main point is really just trying to figure out, like Dr. Haywood said, how can we make it so that it's possible so that African Americans in these communities will have more resources to healthy food in their areas.
Good point. Chef Huda? Chef Huda?
Yes. So I wanted to actually piggyback on what Dr. Haywood said. During the pandemic, a lot of companies found ways to reach communities they necessarily wouldn't have reached before. I know that Amazon started accepting SNAP benefits, making it where food could be delivered to people. And they did this huge push in 2020 to get that word out. But I don't know how effective their campaign was, and if it really reached the people that needed that benefit and needed that service and needed that convenience that wasn't there before. So I think if there's a way for local governments and federal governments as well to incentivize companies to come into different communities and offer those resources, I think that would help. Perfect example here in Maryland, I'm in Prince George's County, and we're one of the richest African-American, yes, hi. We're in Prince George's County, and we're one of the richest African-American affluent communities, but we have food deserts. I know for a fact that some grocery stores have said no because they say that the spending power is not there, which is not true. It forces people like me who like a Whole Foods or like high-end grocery stores to go other places and spend my money there. So I think if there were initiatives by the counties and local government to bring in these businesses, I think we would see our communities transform and our options transform, and that would trickle down to those who are less fortunate as well. So I think it would be a win-win for both. We just have to start thinking about our communities in that way.
And as you might know, during the pandemic, one of the benefits was to increase SNAP or food stamps for each family by $100 per month, and it had a modest, a modicum of benefit. But I mean, it's $100 a month, and you can think about it that I'm sure each one of your families probably spends over $100, perhaps even close to $200 per week for healthy foods. So, and again, even that benefit has gone away. Dr. Hancock, do you think that we really need to kind of stop talking the talk and begin walking the walk by investing really in the people, as opposed to, some of you all might be following news about the United States, sending thousands of troops to Poland and other places about, again, conflicts overseas. We invest so much money in defense, in literally killing people. And yet imagine just instead of $100 a month, maybe $1,000 that can be directed towards and targeted towards healthy food options only. Imagine what type of benefit that could have. Dr. Hancock, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had the privilege of working with the DC City Council on policy related to what you just raised. We attempted to pass something called the Nutrition Equity Amendment Bill with a soda tax, a catalyst tax. We would use that funding to do exactly what you just described. We would invest in small Black businesses like Chef Food. I'm not saying, sis, your business is small, your business is large, but Black-owned and brown-owned businesses that focus on healthy food options, that money would be dedicated to continuing her efforts so that she could go into Southeast DC, create partnerships for healthy food provision. It allowed for nutrition education classes. It doesn't matter if SNAP funds increase if they're still getting hungry man dinners, right? When you pay attention to what families buy when they go in, you don't want to be paternalistic in directing them what they can buy. But when we're honest with each other, when I've gone to the grocery store and been nosy all up in my patients' baskets, I have not seen a bounty of fruits and vegetables and lean cuts of meat, right? And the grocery stores know it, so they up the prices on the foods that families buy around the 1st and the 15th to maximize their profits. So it's looking at policies related to providing these healthy options while recycling money into minority-owned businesses who are doing the work. I'd love it if the Giants and the Safeways and everybody does what they need to do, but I'd much rather that money be funneled into Black and brown businesses to address the issue so that it's your sister, your brother preparing these meals, connecting you to community gardens. There's more of an investment in being able to eat it. In Prince George's County in 2020, I'm proud to say that I helped our county pass the most expansive children's meal bill. So in Prince George's County, where 75% of our food establishments are fast food, now fast food establishments are required to provide the healthy beverage as the default beverage, to provide the healthy side as the default side, and within the next 3 years, offering at least one meal that meets USDA guidelines. It's the first of its kind in the entire country, and we're working on getting this spread across the nation, but we're going against big food and big soda. That's the other issue that we have to talk about, is the wedding of federal and local governments to food organizations, beverage institutions that end up interfering with our success in passing policies like that.
And you also kind of allude in terms of the government, look at how much money is being spent on providing lunches to children in public schools. And what percentage of those public school lunches are using fresh fruits and vegetables. Again, not sugar-laced beverages, but bottled water. And in fact, even not just bottled out of the plastic containers, but out of glass containers. Imagine if those were the types of lunch options that our public schools were able to enjoy. I know that at my children's private schools, at least one, there's a very high quality lunch that is provided to all of the children there. And I, when I went in to visit, and I was thinking, I was like, wow, I want to come here for lunch every day, but imagine if this is the type of lunch that all of our children were able to enjoy.
I just wanted to add to that.
Go ahead, Monique.
I just wanted to add, Dr. Hancock said, at African American Wellness Project, we teach African Americans how to advocate for themselves. And I think, to your point, we have to make sure that in these communities, the parents are actually advocating, speaking out, to their city council, to their community members. They have a vote. So speaking out and not just accepting what the status quo is, but standing up and speaking out for themselves.
Very good point. And we definitely need to do that. Let's turn our attention to the fitness angle, because again, as Dr. Hancock mentioned, I'm sorry, not that, Haygood, getting all of these names, beautiful names, confused a little bit, but Dr. Haygood mentioned that muscle starts or is grown in the kitchen. And we absolutely agree with that. But perhaps we can say that muscle is sustained either on the yoga mat or in the gym or on the pavements in terms of running. Or doing other types of physical fitness. What do you think? We know that, again, according to the Department of Health and Human Services, 12.3% of African Americans hold or held gym memberships as of 2020. I wonder how many of those, again, increased or decreased during the pandemic, but what do you think can be done to increase the fitness of the entire nation, but particularly African Americans, as we talk about this during Black History Month? Let's start with you, Dr. Haygood, and then go to Chef Huda.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll tie in the last question too. So many people probably know that, what we spend in healthcare makes up a significant amount of our budget. And it doesn't even include the expenses that the military spends on healthcare. And when you think about reasons why people go bankrupt, you can link that back to healthcare. It's a significant part of our budget. the US is one of the highest spending countries in healthcare, and then, sort of mid-tier when it comes to healthcare outcomes. And part of that, what I've learned is, like, when you're in a community amongst like-minded people, or people who identify the same way, it's easier to talk about advancing Blackness as a matter of, like, ethics and the right thing to do. And I found on the other side that argument only gets you so far. And in fact, there's a business case to be made for thinking about food, fitness, and other habits as preventative medicine that saves governments money. And that resonates with Republicans and Democrats alike. When you think about it, prior to COVID, if you look at the top 10 reasons why people die in any state, like, you see, like, that diabetes combination creep up for most states. And those are preventative. And in fact, when you look at many of the reasons why people die, they're often linked to environment, nutrition, and fitness. And we as an economy could actually save much more money globally by having more preventative practices in place that are reimbursable. In terms of, like, fitness itself, I would say, like, the first thing is you got to get out of your mindset of what you see in magazines and Instagram, and find your own personal why. And there are things that are really important. So we know that people lose 10% of muscle mass every decade after 40, right? And when you survey people on how they spend time in the gym, often people default to cardio. And there's a lot of benefits to cardio in terms of long-term heart health. But when you look at data, like, walking is just as effective as getting on that treadmill. And when you think about things like high intensity interval training, you really only need short spurts. And there are other benefits to hit, like improving brain function and brain memory. There's something called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And, like, HIIT is one of the only ways to actually improve that. But not getting too much into the weeds there, like, I would say strength training is where you're going to see the biggest gains in fitness, because you may not burn a lot of calories during that actual workout, but you're going to improve human growth hormone and just improve overall bone and muscle density. You're going to notice that you burn calories overnight as you sleep. And then beyond those pieces, you ought to be thinking about incorporating lengthening exercises as much as you incorporate flexing exercises. So you think about flexing your bicep, but we need to lengthen it as much as possible too. And then finally, you need to be thinking about balance. So as you age, your ability to balance and jump, and also around hip mobility, those things become huge risk factors for quality of life, for falls, etc. And those things are very preventable. And incorporating balance into your life also helps you continue to work your brain. If you don't use it, you lose it. So
Right. Very good points. Let's go to Monique and then come back to Chef Huda. Monique.
Sure, I'll just talk a little bit about my personal experience. I think really stress really needs to be addressed. And I know we're talking to the National Bar Association, so I know a lot of the members can relate to that. But for me, I mean, I experienced a lot of stress. I had started a new job, I had moved, and I also have 2 sons, and I just ignored my health. And because of that, I actually developed rheumatoid arthritis. But I kept going. I kept going to work. I kept taking care of my kids. I acted like nothing was going on, and I knew something was going on, but I ignored it. And
Right.
eventually I ended up on crutches. I could barely walk. I had to go and get like 6 cortisone shots in my knee in 1 year. I went to urgent care about 5 times in that year. And again, I
Wow.
still just kept ignoring it. And that's what led me down the path of health and wellness. In addition, like I said, to working as the executive director of AAWP, I'm also a certified health coach because I realized the importance of stopping, self-care, taking care of yourself. When you get older, the things that you could do before, you can't do. I'm now 53. So what I could do at 30 and 40, I can't do anymore. So I think really self-care needs to be addressed and figuring out those small little daily principles and practices that you can do in your life, whether it's walking, yoga for 10 minutes. It doesn't take a lot of time. You really just need to make the time, make yourself a priority and take care of yourself first. So that's what
Monique, I was going to say, if you're 53 and you look as good as you look, you must be doing some good self-care there. In fact, every one of you guys, you can tell that you are a calling card for the work that you do because you guys look marvelous. As that guy, comedian say, you look marvelous. Chef Huda, who looks marvelous. Tell us your thoughts about the fitness angle and working out and what you communicate to your clients about not only just healthy eating, but also healthy living.
Absolutely. I definitely feel that invest in health is investing in you. So anytime that you take time out to deal with your stress, your anxiety, I know coming off of COVID, a lot of people were dealing with stress, anxiety, depression, whether you just were sad all the time, didn't know what it was, you were probably a little depressed because there was that uncertainty that we're still kind of going through what we're coming out of. So listen to your body. I always tell people, even with healthy eating, everything doesn't work for everybody. Being a vegan for me personally doesn't work, but I can do, right. It doesn't work. I need beef every once in a while. I can give up everything else, but I need red meat at some point because my body feels like it needs it. And that's my one hang up. So I always tell people you have to really listen to your body. Think of your healthcare providers as partners in your wellness journey versus your enemy or someone who's out to get you. Because going to your doctor on a regular basis allows you to know things like if you are deficient in anything. I know a lot of African Americans need vitamin D. We have deficiencies in magnesium. Fiber is a huge one for a lot of people. A lot of people don't have enough protein in their diets, and protein allows you to heal and grow muscle. So those are all these little things that you have to really pay attention to. And Monique was absolutely correct. As you get older, those knees do not bend the same way. And things hurt out of nowhere. Stubbing your toe is not the same as when you did when you were 19. So you really have to pay attention to your body and take care of yourself. I love yoga. I love stretch exercises. I think as a society, we don't really emphasize stretching and how many positive benefits there are to stretching your body and relaxing your muscles. Taking just a quiet moment, if you have a crazy schedule, because I, especially as a caterer, have a crazy schedule a lot of the times, taking just quiet moments, whether it's 10 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever you can spare to meditate or just be mindful of how your body is feeling or acknowledge the anxiety that you're having in that moment. These are huge things that make it where you're making yourself the priority and you can still be the superstar and rock star that you are to everyone else, but you're also taking care of you so you can be there longer for the ones that you love.
Very good points. Dr. Yo, you are a Reiki instructor, and I know you provide your clients, your patients with health and wellness exercises or recommendations. What are some of those that you recommend and how have those benefited them and benefit yourself?
So one of the things that I always explore is intentionality. What is your relationship with physical activity? I don't call it the E word because you start saying exercise, people think about high school gym. So we talk about physical activity and what are the ways in which you engage in it? Do you wear an Apple Watch or Fitbit to monitor your number of steps? Sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit based, from what Dr. Haywood said in terms of walking. You don't have to park all up in the grocery store. Park back and achieve your 10,000 step goal. So we really focus on baby steps. When people think exercise, like I'm a gym rat. I was devastated when COVID showed up because I love getting on an elliptical. I will make that thing hum. But not everyone wants to be in a gym. So when we talk about what is your relationship with physical activity, what are the things that you love? Back when I was at Children's, I created a program called Step Up to Health, where we taught the African American form of stepping to middle school adolescent girls. So if they were all in, it was a win. And they absolutely loved it. I knew it was physical activity. For them, it was to get to show out and come up with chants and do all these fun things. I'm a Zumba instructor because I love dancing, right? And I know that for a lot of the African American families that I take care of, dance is in our spirit. So if I can get you out and dancing, it's not exercise. We're just out here rocking with Dr. Yola, getting our dance in. This weekend, I will be completing my second weekend of yoga training, so that from a cultural standpoint, more of us, especially in the faith-based community, we have to really talk about that. There's certain things from a faith-based standpoint that folks don't get engaged in, like Reiki. They're like, you're talking about energy healing. You about to be all up in these portals and stuff. We talk about what does that mean for you as a Black person, as a person of faith. It doesn't mean I'm in here doing chants. When I meditate, I'm praying. It's how you are intentional about what you show up in. Once I can identify what their intentions, their joys, their dislikes are, give them a whole intake packet. Once I know that, we work together as in a partnership to figure out what that physical activity is going to look like. And then I get up in their business. Like just now, my text messages are blown up because 3 of my patients checked in with their selfies to let me know that they actually achieved their goal for today.
And well, why don't you tell us what is Reiki? I mean, because I think that as lawyers perhaps may not know what that is, and how does it connect with yoga or Pilates or those types of things? And can you address obesity with those kind of, as some people might think, more softer types of exercises, if you will?
Right. So Reiki is defined as energy healing. It's similar to acupuncture in that the body is composed of various energy centers. In acupuncture, different parts of your body correspond to different internal organs. With Reiki, the different energy centers are really connected to organs and emotional states. So you have 7 basic energy centers, from your crown, which is your head, all the way down to your root, which is at your feet. Each of those energy centers links to various issues. So for instance, for a family member, a lot of people have lost family members during COVID. Your root energy is what allows you to feel rooted, grounded, secure, and protected. When you do not feel connected to family because they have transitioned, your root chakra can be depleted. And so when patients come in to see me, we go through a full, it's like a holy hallelujah hour where I assess their energy centers in various modalities. And then we work together to get their energy realigned and re-upped. When it comes to obesity, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of factors that come into play. Chef Huda mentioned it, a relationship to food. There are patients of mine, because their root energy is off, because their families shamed them based on how they ate, their relationship with food is directly connected to their root energy. So if I can work with them to get their root energy up, that helps them in terms of how they navigate through their food relationship. I give out what's called a chakra sheet. It talks about various yoga poses that help you with your root energy. I'm very granola, so I'll tell you what essential oils you can use, what foods, Chef Huda, you can connect my clients to or my patients to. So if they're eating foods rich in beets, anything that's rich and red will help you with your root energy. Each of the chakras is associated with a various color. When you eat the rainbow, which I'm sure both Monique and Dr. Haywood would support. When you eat the rainbow, you're eating to your chakra centers. And that's how I approach it in practice and in how I approach it in my daily life.
I think one takeaway from you, Yolanda, is that you have to be open. You have to be open to other things. When I was sick and I didn't know I was undiagnosed, I tried acupuncture and I had said I would never try acupuncture, and it helped. So you do have to be open to trying other things. When it comes to your overall healing, it's not just medicine and doctors. It's how do you look at your whole body and see how it's all connected.
Very good points. Very good points. This, is really, again, why we decided to have this conversation, so we can share these recommendations. And we hope that some of you guys might have questions or comments or recommendations that you might want to share. So please put those in the Q&A. We're going to take a kind of a quick break, if you will, but not a break. It is an opportunity for some of our panelists who are involved with some of the work that we've been talking about to kind of give a demonstration. And so let's start off with Dr. Haywood, who was mentioned before, is a fitness instructor. Dr. Haywood, can you provide us with perhaps a quick demonstration of some of the types of exercises that we can do in our home or office workspaces, especially during this time where, for various factors, some of us might not be getting out as much as we would like to, or we should get out. What would you recommend if you can show us? And I don't know if you want us to get out from our chairs or whatnot, but what would you recommend to show us?
Yeah, maybe you can hit that Kappa shimmy. That'll help you work some calories.
That's right. That's right. Well, IU, as you know, is the birthplace of Kappa Alpha Psi, so we have a bond, if you will.
Yeah. So I would start by saying, sigma is the sum of all things, and
subtle hint there. Go right ahead into those exercises, Doc.
Yeah. So Dr. Yola brought up this great point around like your mindset on what fitness is. So a lot of us think like we have to have a certain uniform to exercise, like yoga pants or a tight fitting shirt or whatever. And in fact, the clothes you have on are just fine. And you ought to be thinking about exercise in different buckets. So part of it is like, where can you add in what I would call movement snacks in your day? So instead of parking as close as you can to the grocery store or your office, can you park a little bit further and think about that as a bonus? If you're working from home, can you create a ritual out of like going outside and just walking to the mailbox and then walking back into your house to start your day? Not only can that provide some mindfulness as well as boundaries on the way you think about work and home, but also helps you get some extra steps in. In terms of like exercises you can do at your desk or where you're working, the first thing we want to do is consider how to wake up those sleepy glutes. So your backside holds you up. A lot of people have lower back pain when they work at a desk or as they age. And that's probably the first thing that you want to focus on. And, a squat is a great exercise to try. And you can really use your chair as a benchmark. So you want to make sure your feet are right outside of your hips and your toes are pointed out. And because you're not working with weight, you want to emphasize what's called time under tension. So you're going to sit back.
I'm going to go ahead and follow you, Doc, because I can give me a little bit of exercise in at the same time.
Do it. So traditionally, when our knees hurt, we sort of lean forward and come straight down. And that's where you feel that pressure in the knees. And you actually want to take a wide space, point the toes back, and then pretend like you're sitting down in your chair. And just before you hit it, you hit your chair, you actually want to hold for a second and then lift up. So as you go down slow and controlled, so they say your glute should be just above the knee line. Just before you hit that seat, you're almost like hovering right above it, and then you pop up, squeezing through your glutes. And you can just do a set of 10 or do as many of those as you can in a minute, and try to consider like a little micro snack, between the hours. Some other variations to consider. So you can take a book and place it on the ground. And then what you want to do is put your heels on top of the book. So your toes are rooted on the ground, and then your heels are on the book, right? So your feet are a little closer together. And this is a little bit of an advanced exercise. But again, using that chair, and you can actually come down and sit on that chair. So you would sit and then you would lift. And you notice a little bit of a different feel in your body. So we're working those quads, the glutes here. And that just gives you a little bit of a different variation, because in a traditional squat, you're working a lot of that backside. And then, of course, with a lunge, a lot of people hate lunges because of their knees. And the key to a good lunge is actually taking a long step back. So taking a long step back and then squeezing your glutes forward, hips are forward. And you kind of want to think about your waistline like a barrel of water. So if you tip forward too much, that water will spill out. Tip back too much, the water will spill out. You press your front knee out and you drop that back knee. And then you want to ground through that front leg and really focus on pressing down through that front leg and squeezing up. And a lunge is such a great exercise because we work all through that leg. And really the combination of those two, along with some calf raises. So with calf raises, there are 3 variations. So you can have your feet together like this, and then you just lift up and down, up and down. You can bring your heels together and turn your toes out, lift the heels up and down, up and down. And then, yeah, that was a little plie there, right? And you can bring the toes together and lift the heels up. 3 different variations of those calves, very important. We call that the triple extension. So working those 3 variations, the calves, the squat and the lunge is really all you need for the legs. And then for your upper body, a good desk push-up. And again, lots of variations here. So you want to make sure your biceps hug the ribs, and you want to find a solid surface, and you're going to lean your weight forward. So the heels come off the ground, and then the same concept, time under tension. So we go down slow, and then we hold at the bottom, and you should feel a little pressure on your chest, and then you pop up. So really by popping up, that's where you feel that squeeze. We actually load the weight at the bottom of the push-up and then pop up top. So when your hands are close together, that allows us to work the inner part of the chest as well as the triceps. And then you want to take one hand position out. That's sort of your traditional push-up. We start to work the chest and the back. So you same concept. And this time your elbows go back and down, and you hold at the bottom, and then you pop up, right? So that time under tension, we go down slow. Another variation is actually to turn your palms upside down. So you actually cup the desk, and you hug the biceps against the ribs, and then you go down slow, and then you pop up. That works the biceps. So you get good bicep training there, good tricep, and good chest training. And then the final thing you could do, of course, would be dips. So on the back of your desk, you just bend your knees, you come down, and then you pop up. And that's all you really need in between the hour. And I would shoot to do, 10 reps, of 2 or 3 exercises, here and there, and make it a part of your schedule. So, from a meeting science standpoint, consider setting things up where you're not always meeting for 60 minutes. By default, plan for your meetings to be 45 or 50 minutes. Use 5 minutes to gather your thoughts or to run to the restroom. And then also see if you can sneak in 5 minutes to do some micro exercises like that.
Wow, that was amazing, Dr. Haywood. I've gotten some. I know that Dr. Hancock was working it out over there. I saw her, and as well as Monique. So we all enjoyed it. And now we have Chef Huda who has a demonstration of her own.
Hey everyone, I'm Chef Huda Moomin, and today we are talking about healthy eating and how to make it fit into your lifestyle on a daily basis. So one of the things I love about food is it's delicious, right? We all have comfort foods that we love. We all have recipes and go-tos, but it's really important that we try to balance. Just like everything in life, we try to balance what we are eating. So the question I get asked the most is, how do I eat healthy? I'm busy, I have kids, I just don't want to cook. Whatever it is, it's just about making really smart decisions each and every day, and including fresh veggies and nutrients into your daily diets. So instead of maybe that double cheeseburger with that Diet Coke, maybe have sparkling water and a turkey burger. It's really just about making smart decisions that fit into your daily lives. So today, I'm gonna demo one of my favorite dishes. This is my curry chickpeas. It's super simple, super easy. Anyone can make it, whether you like cooking, whether you can just boil water, you can make this dish. And we're gonna walk through it. It has great nutrients and vitamins in it. The chickpeas are super healthy for you. And it's just really versatile because if you don't like chickpeas, you can do something else. You can do a cannellini bean, you can do just veggies, you can add in seafood, you can add in chicken, you can add in any type of meat you want, or if you just wanna go straight veggie, then just do that, because it's really about making the kitchen your place. Because guess what? You're cooking for you and people you love. So let's get started. So with this recipe, it's super simple, super easy, and you can find this recipe on chefhuda.com. We are going to start with a little oil in a hot pan. Today I'm using olive oil, but there are great alternative oils out there. So if you wanted to use an avocado oil, or you had another oil that you really like and works for you, use that. Again, it's about really using ingredients that work for you and your lifestyle, because everyone's not the same, right? A lifestyle that works for me or eating habits that work for me might not work for you. That's why diets don't work for everybody. So it's really about balancing each and every day and including nutrients and fresh ingredients where you can. So we have our oil in here. Our pan is hot. Gonna add in some minced garlic. Garlic is great because it has nutrients and anti-inflammatory properties. We're gonna add in our garlic. And we're really just looking for our garlic to kind of just saute down. It's gonna get a little soft. It's gonna start to change colors. You don't wanna brown your garlic or anything like that. And the minute you throw your garlic in here, your house is gonna start smelling like you're doing something amazing. So I always like my aromatics. I like cooking with garlic. I like cooking with onions, and I like cooking with peppers, because it also gives you a base and a foundation for flavor. So a lot of people always ask, when you have your dishes that you love, how do you swap out things? How do you make sure it's still flavorful, right? Healthy eating doesn't mean it doesn't have flavor. It just means you have to be a little more creative about what you're putting into your food to achieve that flavor that you want. So we're adding in our peppers and our onions. If you wanted to add in red peppers or yellow peppers or orange peppers, you can do that as well. If you wanted to use a shallot instead of an onion, you could do that as well. And we're literally just sauteing this down. Just give it a nice little spin so everything can get friendly in the oil that's in here. And we're just gonna let this cook for a couple minutes. And you're just looking for the onions and peppers to kind of sweat down like our garlic did, and kind of just get friendly and start the cooking process. So the other question I always get asked is, how do you make healthy food taste good? As I said, I love using garlic, onions, and peppers. I also like experimenting with different seasonings. One of the reasons I started Just Savor Spices, which is our spice line, is because I wanted to offer people salt-free options that had bold flavors. So we use spices from different countries, from global cuisines, to really season food and give people that kick that they're looking for. And the great thing is, especially if you're using salt-free options, you can add in the salt when you need to, and you can adjust your palate as you need to. So our onions and peppers are in here. They're looking great. They're looking fantastic. It smells so good. I know you're like, I don't have time for this. This dish literally takes 15 to 20 minutes, depending on if you're just doing the chickpeas or if you're adding in a protein. So anyone can make this dish. You make it ahead of time, and you can save it. You can freeze it as well. It's great for lunches and great if you have just a pop-up dinner that you need to make. So we're now gonna add in our chickpeas, the star of the show. Chickpeas are great because they're high in fiber, calcium, magnesium. They've been known to lower cholesterol, help with lowering blood pressure, and also help you control your blood sugar. So they're really fantastic. And of course, if you don't chickpeas, you can find garbanzo beans in your grocery store. Now, I know for most people, chickpeas is a canned item. With canned items, I always tell people, make sure you're reading the back of the label with anything that comes out of a package. You wanna make sure that you pronunciate everything that is on the package. If there's words that you can't spell and you can't readily say, it's probably not healthy for you. So try to get something that's close to the natural state of whatever it is that's in that can or that package. And make sure you're checking your sodium levels, your sugar levels, and your fat levels as well. So our chickpeas are in, we're gonna season it. Today I'm using our biryani spice. We also sub out sometimes for our Kamala masala. We're adding in a little turmeric just to get that beautiful color. And for me, biryani spice already has cinnamon in there, which is great as well. But I'd like to add just a little more, just for a little more flavor. And we're just letting the chickpeas kind of cook in. Gonna let this cook for a couple of minutes, and then we add in our tomatoes. And we're just letting everything get friendly in the pan. Our tomatoes today, we're using fire roasted. If you wanted to use raw tomatoes, you could. Completely up to you. Again, if you're using a canned tomato like a fire roasted, get the low sodium one. And it's up to you if you include the juice or not. Completely up to you. I like it because it adds a little more flavor. If you're watching your sodium labels, go ahead and rinse the tomatoes and just use them in their natural state. And now for the other star of the show. Now you note I have not put any salt in here yet because I like to salt at the end to make sure that we keep our sodium levels low. And also it's great to taste and get in the habit of tasting your food before you salt it. I know a lot of times people grab for the salt and pepper before they tasted something. Get in the habit of tasting your food and really experiencing and appreciating the natural flavors. And then we added our coconut milk, and we're just gonna let everything kind of get friendly. And we're gonna let our coconut milk just cook down a little bit. And we're gonna reduce it down, turn up the heat. And you're just gonna let this do its magic. Coconut milk is a great alternative, especially if you need to be if you're lactose intolerant and can't have lactose. You could also use vegan options as well. It has anti-inflammatory properties, calcium, vitamin A, vitamin B12, and other nutrients as well. So it's a wonderful option if you are going dairy-free. All right, so this is just gonna cook down. Turn that up and bring it to a simmer. And then once that's done, we're gonna add in some more nutrients, because remember I told you it's about adding in nutrients where you can. We have our spinach. We're just gonna add that in, break it up. And let everything get friendly. So exciting. So remember, eating healthy is about swapping out ingredients where you can, making smart decisions where you can, making sure we're reading our packages, making sure that we are not including saturated fats into our diets, anything high in sugar, anything high in cholesterol. We're making sure that we're reading our packaging and making sure we're understanding what we're putting into our bodies, because it's really about doing what works for you. And this is delicious and beautiful. We have some brown rice, which is a great alternative. I'm just gonna add our chickpeas. Look at that. So delicious, so easy. I wish you could smell this. Ooh, look at this, look at this. Simple, easy. You can make this at home. Recipes on chefhuda.com, and spices are at justhuda.com. Eating healthy is about investing in you, so enjoy.
I'm hungry already, you know. And while Ramadan is a couple of months away, I can eat that and maybe save some up for my Ramadan, break fast, if you will. But I'm really looking forward to trying that recipe out, Chef Huda, and going to chefhuda.com to get some more of your recipes. And that took only, I guess, 10 minutes to make that, huh?
Takes about 15 minutes, but it's a
15
really
minutes.
simple, easy dish that anyone can make. Once your coconut milk reduces down, your veggies cook, you're good to go. You just have to enjoy it.
Excellent, excellent. Well, this is really apropos to this conversation, especially for lawyers. I mean, we talk about these issues from a public policy standpoint, but many of us experience some of these same issues, but at least the issues of stress, at least the issues of not having enough time to maybe shop in the places that we would, find the healthiest foods, or not have enough time to cook the healthiest of foods. Not we I'm sure all of us don't take as many exercise breaks, or what did you call them, Dr. Haywood? You call them exercise what? Crunch breaks? I forgot those. Snacks, exactly. Exercise snacks as we should. And again, we hope that those lawyers and others who are joining us today are taking note and stocking up on some of these great tips that you guys have shared. And so let's go straight into it. Chef Huda, what are some of those kind of elements or recipes, or in particular some of those particular foods that are inside of recipes that should be substituted? We know, for example, in African Americans, for example, as Dr. Haywood said earlier, we enjoy things such as fried chicken. Dr. Yolandra is from New Orleans, and so there in New Orleans is a rich tradition of the thick casseroles, also known as gumbos. And in those gumbos, there's pretty much everything, in those gumbos. But what would you recommend that we began to do to just preserve some of the flavors, but take out some of those things that are harmful and in fact deadly to us, to all people, but particularly African Americans?
Thank you for that question. I get asked this question a lot because we do have our traditional foods that we love, depending on where your family's from. New Orleans is one of my favorite places to eat. So that gumbo is amazing, but you have to make changes. I always tell people our family recipes are how our family did it because it was what they had and what they could source. Now we have more options. Now we have non-dairy options. Now we have more vegan options. We have all of these wonderful options now. So why not explore them, right? You're still not using a plug-in phone. You're using a cell phone. So we have to evolve our diets and our recipes the same way that we evolve with technology and everything else in our life. So for me, I always tell people that they should try different things. Be open to trying different ingredients. Mac and cheese in my household is a huge one. We love our mac and cheese, but we all are lactose intolerant. So
how do you bake your mac and cheese? Let's see the ingredients you got in your mac and cheese.
So it's been a fun journey kind of going through our different macaroni and cheeses, right? Sometimes we splurge and we do the traditional ones, but we use different milk alternatives. We've also cut down the amount of butter that goes into our dishes and sub that out for healthier oils. We've used whole wheat
olive
noodles.
oils or what kind of oils?
So we've used olive oil. I have an avocado allergy, so I can't partake in avocado, but that's also a great option as well. Some of my family members have used grapeseed oil. It just depends on what works for you and what your taste buds are. I know for our cheeses, we've done some of the vegan cheeses or using a higher quality of one cheese versus 6 to get that same sharp flavor that you love from your 6 to 8 to 9, depending on your auntie, mac and cheeses that we've done in the past. As far as our milk options, if we are using milk, we usually typically use a low fat milk or reduced fat milk, or we use a complete milk or dairy alternative. You can use chickpeas, you can use cashews, you can use squashes as your base for your sauces, and you kind of still get that that luxurious and luscious sauce that we all love, that creaminess that you're desiring. So it's really about using seasoning as well. In my mac and cheese, I will say one of my secret ingredients is there's nutmeg in there because it's a nice contrast to the creaminess of the cheeses. So it boosts the flavor that way. I also put red pepper flakes in my mac and cheese. And I've served my mac and cheese in a lot of different places, including the White House. So it's valid. I know some people hear the ingredients, they're like, wait a minute, I don't know about this mac and cheese. But it's really about experimenting and just finding alternatives that work for you and making healthier options. With the fried chicken, you can do a baked chicken, you can do an air fried chicken. One of the things I've been experimenting with is we'll do a roasted chicken. We do chicken tenders, and then I will actually coat them in a sticky sweetener, if you will, or maple syrup or something natural like a honey or something to that effect, and then roll them in a crispy panko breadcrumb. So you start getting that same crunch that you love, but it's a much healthier option than deep frying chicken. So it's really just about making choices where you can. Obviously, you don't have to give up everything. If you need to indulge, make sure that you're balancing that indulgence. So it's really just listening to your body, understanding what you're putting into your body, and just making it delicious. Put the love in your food, you guys, and you won't be disappointed.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation. We have been begging people to ask questions, but they didn't decide to do that. So I'm going to ask one last question as we conclude this really robust conversation. So, we are here now 2+ years out of the pandemic. Some of us have had COVID. I have had COVID myself, and grateful that we were able to survive it. So what are your survival tips? If we were going to conclude, what is your survival tips, things that we can just pocket, what resources might you have? What can be done to keep yourself, if you do contract COVID, minimize the impact, and what can be done? What would you recommend in terms of our daily things that we should do other than what we've already talked about to incorporate in our lives? So let's start with you, Monique.
I want to just reiterate or just highlight 3 main points or 3 things that people can do that are very simple. I've coached about 200 people in the past year back to their goal weight through these healthy habits. And it's really water intake. Water intake is key. You don't realize how much water can make a difference in your skin, your hair, your nails, your overall organs. So drinking lots of water, 1. 2, sleep. Sleep helps with so many things, and sleep also, lack of sleep alleviates or leads to stress. So sleep is important. And then also healthy habits of motion. We all talked about that. It doesn't take long, 10 minutes tops, yoga, swimming, walking, whatever it is, move your body. And then lastly, just make sure you practice self-care and listen to your body and don't ignore it. I know we're all busy, especially I'm sure the members here, but just take time for yourself, because if you have to make yourself the most important priority and take care of yourself before you can take care of other people. So those are the things I would say. They're very simple things that everyone can do, and they will help alleviate you getting sick and also make sure you have the best health possible.
Well, I really appreciate that point about sleep. I know this has been a major issue myself. I sometimes am guilty about not going to sleep until 1 o'clock in the morning. And I know that's crazy, but I don't think it's abnormal, particularly for lawyers, and particularly people like myself who are both in the legal as well as the tech sector. But it's dangerous. And so I think that's something that needs to be focused on much more. So thank you very much, Monique, for your advice, and particularly your command that we focus on that. Dr. Hancock.
Sure. The first thing I would say is to focus. I use with my patients something called a life balance wheel, where we look at least 8 domains of health: your physical health, your spiritual health, your relational health, your emotional health, your mental health, your financial health, your sexual health, right? Sexual health with yourself and whoever your partner is, your relational health, all of those things. I do it for myself and even for my daughter. She's 9 years old, but we talked about what does sexual health mean for her as she's entering into this space of puberty. And as we're navigating through this pandemic, it would be such a devastating moment if we did not learn from what we have just survived and thrived through. And so on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you with your physical health? That includes the things that Monique mentioned: your sleep, your stress, your physical activity, your nutrition. How long do you sit? You guys are attorneys. You're spending a lot of time sitting. Studies show that when you sit for longer than 2 hours a day, it cuts 7 years off of your life. So how often are you getting up to move about and do the exercises that Dr. Haywood just mentioned? Looking at your financial health. And then the second thing is, what is your connection? If you are a parent, a grandparent, an auntie, or an uncle, as we come out of this pandemic, how are we having conversations with our children? It's one of the things we didn't have a chance to talk about today, but it certainly is something that I would compel everyone to do. As grownups, we have the executive functioning to navigate through and rationalize what we've just experienced. But between birth through about 26, they do not. So we really have to have conversations with our young people. We have seen within the Black community, at least 3 prominent Black folks, young people who have committed suicide in the past 2 weeks. And there is something called suicide contagion, where once it happens in our community, you start to see it spread like wildfire. So it's really checking in with our young people to see how they have experienced this pandemic and what do they need to navigate through it. And the third thing is, what do we do collectively as a community to work together? You know, clearly we're part of the talented 10th, but what about the other 90% of us who need our expertise, our resources, our voice, and our advocacy in how we spread the wealth, the technology we create, how we vote? All of those things have to be very intentional as we navigate through this as a Black community.
Thank you so much, Dr. Haywood.
Yeah, thank you. I would say, just building off of what everyone stated, expand your network and your net worth. You know, as a first generation, you know, low income child raised by my mother, there's just a lot I didn't know. And the more spaces I enter with people who have capital that I've yet to obtain, it's amazing how being in the room matters. And then seeking sponsorship in those spaces. And then of course, like everyone said, like knowing your own personal net worth and know what you're willing to put up with. And at the end of the day, your firms and organizations will choose, it's business interests over your personal health. So is it really worth working 120 hours a week? You know, those are things that you have to explore yourself. And then around COVID and the science, you know, we need to get out of a dualistic mentality that, you know, what they said at the beginning of March 2020 is inconsistent with what they're saying now. You know, science evolves, and that's the beauty of science, is continuing to learn. So I would say, get out of a black and white way of thinking, our duality of the mind, and offer some grace and recognize we should be respecting the best available science at the time. And like Dr. Yola mentioned, financial literacy, and this is specifically to this audience, you know, of hardworking lawyers and health providers, like you really ought to be thinking about generational wealth of your family, and how you prioritize things like healthy food, because eating healthy is expensive on the front end.
I
And
appreciate that.
it's absolutely worth it. And related to that is the fact that food is medicine, and you ought to be thinking about it that way.
Yeah, I'm also, you kind of like chuckling within, because I see all these people who are splurging by going on these like really expensive vacation trips in exotic places, and yet you see some of the foods that they eat, or some of, you know, their own kind of physical, you know, BMI, you know, body mass indexes, and you kind of wonder where their, you know, priorities are in terms of their spending. You know, it's one thing to talk about, as Dr. Hancock said, the external factors that contribute to obesity, but yet, as you mentioned, we have some self responsibility and self introspection to do. So I appreciate you for commending that to us. Chef Huda, your last thoughts.
I agree with everyone on the panel and some great tips. My COVID survival advice is to set boundaries with yourself, others. Make sure that you're balancing your work life. If you are feeling something that's not a normal state for you, acknowledge it and seek the help that you need, whether that's talking to a friend, a pastor, your doctor, especially if it's health related. Your doctors are there to help. And sometimes your underlying issues are not something that you can just figure out or Google. So take that time to really pay attention to what your body's telling you. You know when you need sleep. You know when you need to hydrate. You know if you've been drinking 37 espressos around the clock and you're just stress ball and you just can't deal with the anxiety of what's happening in your daily life. Take the time out and give yourself permission to prioritize yourself. Because at the end of the day, none of this matters if you're not here. And if you don't take care of yourself and you don't balance your life and you don't work out, eat healthy, and take care of your spiritual self and your mental health, you're not going to be here. So it's not going to matter. So really prioritize yourself, set those boundaries, balance your life, and be okay with needing more time to process what is happening, because we all are figuring it out each day. No one has all the answers. But at least if you give yourself that time to reflect and to process, you'll come out on the better side of everything. So,
Well, I know we've gone about 6 minutes over, but I'll give you 3 recommendations from my own cabinet or toolkit. One, I would say is, again, what you eat. I have begun, I used to eat a lot. It was probably a lot of lawyers. I used to eat out like every day a week, pretty much, but I have begun, taking, and this is just the first time I met Chef Huda, but I began doing some of my own cooking. In fact, cooking for myself every day. And I look forward to trying some of your recipes. So I encourage people to do that and incorporate, supplements. I have about 10 supplements that I take before I go to sleep every night. And I've been told that they're working, especially with the grayness in my hair. You know what I mean? So I can say that it is working. Second of all, I definitely have began to increase my intake of exercise, yoga, Pilates, bar, some high intensity interval training, especially as Dr. Haywood said. Those are some of the things I really enjoy myself. And I'd like to say lastly is really increasing my regimen of prayer and connecting with the Almighty. I can't say enough. I was listening to a lecture or a radio interview just a couple of days ago, and they were talking about the scientific benefits from having a relationship with the Almighty. And these are people who are atheists, discussing this. So, when it has been acknowledged and being acknowledged that these are the types of things that are helping us, I think we need to begin to incorporate them more as a people. But this has been a wonderful conversation. I want to commend our sponsors, the National Bar Association's Health Law Section, the American Health Law Section, the Black Women's Health Imperative. I want to thank Dr. Yolanda Hancock for her beautiful conversations and tips. Monique Lenore, I want to thank you. Chef Huda Muhman, really appreciate those dietary tips, and I'm looking forward to going to that website that you've left. And Dr. Haywood, thank you so much. I put into the chat the contact information for all of us. Feel free to scroll back up there. I hope that this, again, information is going to be available on the website. I think that our staff has placed the links for where that conversation will be listed on the National Bar Association's website. We hope that you will enjoy it and will share the information and spread the word. Again, as was said earlier, knowledge is power. And we have to begin doing different things if we want different results. And I pray during this Black History Month that we have made a difference that will impact the lives of those not only within our homes, but also those around us. Without any further ado, I will bid you good afternoon, and we look forward to continuing this dialogue with you in days to come. Have a great day.